This video is sponsored by Mantis Sleep. There are countless videos covering the nuances and not so nuanced things that make Hades so great. Don't worry, I'm going to cover all those as well, but I also want to focus on something that hasn't been in every video so far. My GamingWins experience with it, and moreover, what we can learn from the themes of Hades' story. I think we all clocked that Hades was quite different the moment we got through our very first run. It's a game that is dripping, oozing, pussing all over with passion. It's not often that you pick up a game and you can just feel the love that a developer had for their project. From the art direction to the voice acting, the music, all the way down to how Charon has 100 different unique voice lines. You can see it. Did he have to have 100 different grunts? No, but that just speaks directly to the design philosophy that Supergiant had when creating Hades. They made one of the best roguelikes in history with a story almost as ever-ending as its gameplay. With a story concerning gods that has never felt more human. And that is what I'm super excited to talk about with you. But before we get into that, the forces of the underworld are bound to wear you down, and you're going to need proper rest in order to defeat them, and that's why I'm so excited to share with you my favorite sleeping mask. Mantis Sleep has hands down been the best thing that has come my way for quality of life improvements. I use the Mantis Sleep Pro mask every night. As a side sleeper, the Pro is especially designed for this purpose. But there's also the regular sleep mask for the all-around sleepers, a silk one for the lavish of you, and the super neat one I've only recently tried with built-in Bluetooth headphones for the optimal shut the whole world up around you experience. Since the buds are built into the mask, you can still sleep on your side and not have painful ears, thanks Zeus. These masks have been especially helpful as I'm already asleep when my partner gets home and she doesn't have to worry a lick about turning on any lights. They're super lightweight, breathable, and most of all comfortable. After breaking it in, the mask just morphs onto my head and I don't even realize I'm wearing it. And they're super compact, easily rolled up and tossed into a bag to bring on airplanes, to the in-laws, or my favorite, camping trips. I've almost pulled a Pokemon and collected them all, and I truly believe this product makes life better, and I'm really excited to try out the silk masks here soon. I always see Reddit posts about what small purchases you've made that have made a big impact on your daily life, and Mantis Sleep always comes to mind. I would 100% recommend and encourage you to try out Mantis Sleep, as I can guarantee you will not regret it. Use my links in the pinned comment and description to get 10% off your order using code GAMING and join the uninterrupted dark side of good sleep. I distinctly remember first booting up Hades. The minimal main menu screen reminds me almost of a Souls game, as if Supergiant knew they didn't need to show off what they got. The House of Hades is truly our main menu. Getting into it for the first time was something else. I originally was put off by the top-down nature of this game, and is why I never gave the game a chance in the past. Coming off God of War Valhalla, I was so in love with the genre, I needed more of it and just took the plunge. And somehow Supergiant had me just as connected to these characters despite the isometric view as I would have been from a third-person perspective. This is aided in part by the gorgeous portraits that arrive when starting a conversation. Being able to see the different characters in such detail compared to their in-game models and the subtle changes in expression or pose really brought this game closer to a visual graphic novel at times more than a video game. Which is super fresh even still. Visual novel games aren't anything new, but the deft and clever writing with loops on loops and the smallest of conditionals triggering conversation based on actions you've taken leads to a visual novel that feels truly alive and reactive. Because of this, we feel that we have more at stake in the narrative. It makes the slow progression run after run feel meaningful, even if we get our pooper pushed in by Meg in the not so sexy way. Which brings me to, oddly, what I described to be the side offering. As after my 10th run, I was more motivated and enjoying the story side of things than the gameplay. I know, hot take, but y'all know how I love my stories in games. Even with that said, there is something so cozy with the gameplay. Even during the highest stress moments when I'm out of Death Defiance and clenching the pooper to keep Theseus out because of spite. I know I'm not going to beat Hades this run, but as long as this bitch ass motherfucker, I'll die happy. I think I blacked out for a second. What immediately stood out to me with Hades was the distinct lack of tutorials and holding our hand. We are given nothing and just dropped into our first run and completely expected to figure it out. We're much like Zagreus in the sense that he doesn't have any clue what he is doing, only that he must escape. And I loved this intro. Learning about my moves and all the systems organically like this make it stick much more in my head than being fed walls of text right from the start. I keep saying it, but I got to live in this world and felt rewarded massively for it. The slow roll of everything this game has on offer 100% must be a product of the early access, which alongside Baldur's Gate, this game did right. With every run or every couple runs, there would be something new to discover at the House of Hades. Mostly conversation, but most excitingly a new gameplay system, a new story beat, a store where I can buy decorations and make me dad's crypt be dripping. I bet this game's got it all. Dating sim, playing house, masochism, and it's that bit I want to focus on. After defeating Hades for the first time, we learn that we've got to do it over and over again, and we're offered the option of heat to apply to runs. This is where the game truly felt like it opened up and that I was playing Hades. Being able to play around with these settings to tailor a run to either my resource goals or even my mood for the day was a treat. If I wanted to grind Titan Blood for aspects, easy. Just wanted to have a chill run to beat Hades and progress the story, no problem. And by no problem, I mean by that as the base game's balance, as I believe it's almost perfect. All of the weapons can be boiled down to just dash attacking and winning. Yeah, that would get you quite far, and by far, I mean like I almost killed Hades on my 4th ever run using the spear and dash attacks. I was so hyped, it's so close, and like a Souls game to be humbled, I never got that close again for another 20 runs. Such as Hades and roguelikes, you'll always have that one badass run you'll never forget and always aspire to reach, or one perfect build that you loved that you'll spend forever trying to recreate, and that's where the true fun is found in Hades. Boons, infernal arms, aspects, the mirror of the night, all of these different things coalescing makes the Lord of the Underworld tremble before us is a feeling like no other. Seeing chunks of health be depleted is better than crack. Conversely though, what I also found just as fun as the min-maxed spear or shield dash builds were the super jank weird stuff. Trying out a new weapon like the bow and learning which boons work best and how I like to approach a weapon isn't something I did much. Got a schedule I don't keep after all. But when I did, it was like playing an entirely new game. Much like Monster Hunter, changing a weapon almost feels like changing gameplay genres. Okay, a bit dramatic, as the difference between spear and shield aren't as vast as gun and sword. There's a playstyle in just the weapons alone for, I feel, anyone, and I believe that the fact that each weapon's move list is super stripped down and simple makes for the boons to be the real star of the show. Boons are the real meat and potatoes of Hades. Without them, die! You know what I mean. Between the conversations we have with the gods each time in the name of Hades, Olympus, I accept this message, and all the theory build crafting had a brother hooked. I've always been 2 steps away from one of the spreadsheet guys, writing down what worked and didn't and what I was always looking for and trying to figure out ways to game the system and try and get specific boons I wanted and ensure others I didn't wouldn't take up precious slots. It was such a fun meta game on top of the one itself, and that's where I personally derive some of my deepest satisfaction in gaming. There's almost no better feeling than grinding for hours, theory crafting that perfect build, and finally seeing it come to fruition. Hitting the Hermes speed boost with a perfect Daedalus hammer and Poseidon's call? Oh, baby, I did feel unstoppable. Which brings you back to the game balance I mentioned. You can tailor the game to whatever you want it to be with the heat levels, but only in the harder direction. It takes most people at least 20 runs to beat Hades for the first time, and hell, half of those are just learning the game. The other half is perfecting runs, but it's that base game's balance where I found the most enjoyment. It's not that I ever felt outmatched, but I never ran into an obstacle that I didn't believe I couldn't take down in time. It never felt unfair, even if I called bullshit a handful of times. And I think that's what the early access really helped dial in here, was that first time experience. We all get to play Hades for the first time once, so they wanted it to be perfect, and to me, it is. Even when I reached Theseus and realized it's a gank fight, I didn't feel like this was going to be impossible. I mean, it's hard as shit, and still is always the one fight we're preparing for until we reach the Temple of Styx, which I've got to say is the best relief. We get to see the goodest boy, have a shop loaded with goodies, and some easy dungeons to take a load off and prepare for the final fight. And that final fight, I was honestly surprised when I arrived at Hades. The first time I said, really? This quickly? Not knowing to get the final ending that I'd have to defeat him 10 more times. The fight itself, though, is pretty great. For the most part, Hades is a game of mobbing, just killing everything you can as fast as possible, but Hades forces us to slow down. We have to watch out for his patterns, bait his attacks, and be vigilant. He almost goes against everything we've learned about the combat up to this point. And he's the god of the underworld. He shouldn't have to play by the rules set out by the rest of the game. Then the addition to the second phase that definitely ruined my ass is I would have defeated him on my 4th very run. I was so hyped that I did it so quickly in the first phase. But alas, his second form gets us using the environment, target priority, timing. Everything we've learned throughout the game is needed to take him down, which makes him the perfect final fight. Topping off with the most wonderful treat of dialogue we're given each time we face him. After defeating Hades, we're finally out of the underworld and are greeted by snow, a beautiful sunrise, and Persephone's bountiful homestead, all in juxtaposition of what we've had to deal with in the underworld, and that brings me to the visual style of the game. Hades looks incredible. Originally, Hades had a more painterly art style, but soon after shifted to the pen and ink one we ended up with. There's something about this choice that evokes more of a graphic novel side of things. The deep blacks and inky borders and everything feels like we're watching a moving novel rather than just playing some pretty game. I love how each level is very distinct from one another. Starting in the dungeon of Tartarus, moving through the fires of hell into the beautiful fields of Elysium, and finally reaching the snowy summit of this gauntlet to be rewarded with the warmth of the sun and our mother. It's a very focused progression, not just from a narrative standpoint, but from an artistic one as well. Hades is an incredibly woven tapestry that is able to weave every aspect of its team's talents to create a game so decisive in its intent, which is heavily supported and fostered by the genre it finds itself in, a roguelike. Roguelikes have a gameplay system that can be played forever, and generally this comes after the story and has some hand-waved reason why we can continue forth. Hades took the challenge of, yeah, but what if we made the story kind of be infinite too? Supergiant's dedication to crafting not just a story, but a living world with a host of characters that seem to never run out of things to say and do, still to this day has no rival. Even the idea of recording and writing this many lines seems superfluous when most people will never hear them, and that design philosophy is why Hades is so great. It's okay to miss things. You're almost encouraged to. You aren't meant to hear every line of dialogue and max out every relationship. Everyone's playthroughs is a different experience of which relationships they pursue and which ones they ignore. And there are branches for all of these choices. You can go an entire game without ever talking to Nyx, whom, if you recall, is quite an important figure to Zagreus, not just narratively, but also on the gameplay front. To have this level of flexibility, I feel like could only have been achieved in a genre that has so open and closed loops such as this. The story Supergiant wanted to tell could have been explored in a different genre, of course, but when futility and perseverance are such large themes in your story, they fit in with roguelikes genre like two nuts in a ball sack. So let's unpack that sack, shall we? We follow Zagreus' attempts to escape Hades, not only to remove himself from his father's will, of which he despises, but more importantly, find his true mother, Persephone. And the thing I love about this story is how it fits so well in with the structure of the game. When we finally defeat Hades and reach her, we think that's it. We did it. And then we're hit with a gut punch that Zagreus cannot survive on the surface. It's his fate to be bound to the underworld, just like his father. And yet this doesn't deter Zagreus, even for a moment. It only lights the fires under him to drive harder, fighting through the hosts of the underworld just to spend a few moments with his mother. I can't think of anything more touching and bittersweet than that. It's something we can all understand immediately and relate to. The lengths people would go to see their mother one more time are astronomical. My mother is still with us, but even the thought of her being gone, I would instantly do as Zagreus does every day if it meant I got to hug her one more time. This constant struggle of going through the same pain over and over again just to be sent back to Hades is at the center of this game's themes. Highlighted best with Sisyphus, doomed forever to roll a boulder up a hill just for it to roll back down as he summits. This is what we must do with Zagreus, with a bit of Olympian assistance. Sisyphus is somewhat of an anomaly in this game. Just about every other character we interact with is missing something, or isn't complete, so to speak. Achilles with Patroclus, Eurydice and Orpheus, or Meg and Zagreus' strained relationship. By the end, amends are made or relationships are repaired, but not for Sisyphus. This entire time, we believed that his task of rolling the boulder was a curse, and we later find that even when he's been freed, that he doesn't want to leave. He's found peace and happiness in his futile pursuits. That's the first nut that Zagreus must learn throughout his eternal attempts to escape the underworld. Perfectly buttoned with this line from Sisyphus: escape over and over again to prove it can't be done. This paradoxical line strikes at the core of not just the gameplay systems, but Zagreus' entire purpose in the story. The whole point at the start was to escape and find his mother, and even when he realizes he can't escape, he continues to do so anyway. After reuniting his mother with Hades, he finds a new purpose in his attempts, shoring up underworld security and eventually befriending the gods enough to bring the family back together. Then what's his purpose after that? It can be just as simple of doing it again to prove it can't be done. Just like Sisyphus' boulder, it all comes down to finding happiness and joy in what things are instead of living in a world of what could be, embracing the futility of it all. And that's a cute statement and a fine one to live by. Sisyphus is the premier example of this, but Hades offers an alternative solution beyond just accepting what is. And that brings me to the other nut at the heart of this ballsack of the story: perseverance in spite of this futile life. Even when Zagreus knows he can never escape the underworld, this never deters him for a second. He does part one of it all and accepts this reality, but doesn't do so passively and just learn to be okay with these circumstances. He fights tooth and nail to reunite his parents, help everyone around him find their peace, and in the end he brings together his family who have long been estranged from the House of Hades. And even after all of this, the only thing left for Zagreus to do is run through the gamut of the underworld still. But by the end of it all, because of his unwillingness to just accept what is, he's able to make the House of Hades, a once dreary place of depressed, stressed individuals, bloom once again to fulfill its morbid duties of watching over the souls of the dead. Even in hell, Zagreus is able to find love and build something beautiful for himself and everyone around him. We all die, and the sun's gonna explode one day. So, Hades has a story that already takes place in the world of the dead, and following a character that is undying. So it poses the question of what we do with the time we're given, whether finite or not, and that oh so simple idea, that we get to decide, is enough. And that is an encouraging thought. And if you're wondering why this school of thought sounds familiar, it's because it's something our good friend J.R.R. Tolkien had Gandalf relay to us. And it's something I so often forget when the futility of my life becomes overwhelming. When the call of the white shores he describes to Pippin takes hold, it brings me back to the privilege we all share, to get to be in this moment together. You listening to this video and me getting to create it for you. Zagreus makes for our perfect hero and vessel to bestow this lesson upon his friends and us. He is the only one in this story who never loses heart and finds his meaning and his peace. And through his perseverance in the futile, he is able to foster a life worth living, not only for himself, but for everyone he touches. Even in ways he never anticipated or had a direct hand in. You can never know the length of which you impact someone's life. But remember that just by the very act of choosing to persevere, you're inspiring others to do the same. Death Defiance is the one game mechanic that makes it possible for so many of us to defeat the demons becoming of the House of Hades, and is something that we should choose ourselves every day.